G'day, Russell here, Prime Motion Training. One of the things I do for my members who are preparing for their selection panel interview is that we talk about how to break up some quality life experiences so that we can use the one quality life experience to cover multiple key selection criteria. So I just want to take you through a really quick exercise to help you do that. Let's assume that one of the high value good quality life experiences that you've identified is where you've taken a trip overseas. International travel is always a good place to look for good quality life experiences. Traveling has life experience attached to it, and it's implied that if you're traveling around the world, you're gaining good life experiences in the process. So let's take a look at a trip that you've planned to travel around Europe. Now, we can take that one quality experience and break it up into smaller quality experiences by using the timeline technique. So the timeline works like this. Way back at the beginning of this process, before you went to Europe, you would have made the decision to go. So one of the first things that we can leverage out of your trip to Europe is deciding to go, the ability to make decisions. And we can go into detail about how you could leverage that. The other thing that could come into play as a smaller experience within your trip to Europe could be that when you first arrived, maybe you found it really difficult. Maybe it was challenging, and maybe you even thought, gee, this is not as good as I thought it was going to be. Maybe I've made the wrong decision. And to stick at it and to follow through properly, you might have had to show a high level of resilience. Okay, so as we move along the timeline, we can be looking at smaller, high-quality experiences that we can extract from the larger, high-quality experience, in this case, a trip to Europe. So let's say once we've arrived, we finally start to settle in, and now we have to adapt. It's a different country, different language, different lifestyle, rules, and so on, different cultures. So that ability to adapt can be really highlighted when you're sharing travel to another country and all of the differences that come along with being in a different country. And to be able to adapt to something, we've got to show that it's different to what we would normally do. So we could use the ability to adapt as a way to provide a good quality experience, but we've taken it out of that larger experience, and that is, of course, the trip to Europe. So if we keep moving along, maybe there's a situation whilst you're there where the language barrier created a really difficult situation for you, and you had to use effective communication skills in order to get that situation resolved. Okay, again, we're using the trip from Europe, but as we move along the timeline, we're breaking that trip up into smaller life experiences that we can share to address individual key selection criteria. And of course, each of these things can address different key, well, not the trip, but adapting, and can address those different criteria. So if you have a capability profile that you need to address or key selection criteria that you need to address, this is a really good little technique to help you take one good quality experience and break that up into multiple smaller pieces of good quality content that can address multiple key selection criteria. Okay, so let's look at one more. Maybe you decide that before you get to the end of your trip here, on your way home, you're going to take a little stopover in Asia, spend another 3 or 4 days in Asia before coming home. Well, if you're changing your plans, that's going to take a little bit of prioritizing, organizing. There would be a lot of logistics involved. So you might be able to demonstrate your ability to manage logistics or manage a project or manage a complicated task, rearranging flights, arranging new accommodation, visas and passports and all of these sorts of things. So if we just have a look now, we've taken what we feel is a good quality experience, and a trip to Europe would be considered a pretty good quality life experience, and we've adapted that or broken that down into smaller sections where we can use that one experience to address, well, in this case, 5 different potential questions that you might get in a selection panel interview. Okay, and so that's a little technique you can use. I just call it the timeline technique, where you take your experience over a timeline, and it doesn't have to be a trip to Europe. It can be anything that's happened that you feel is a good quality experience. Stretch it out over the timeline and slice it up into smaller pieces. Now, of course, the next step, if we took something like decision, the next step would then be to create the framework to deliver the decision part of your trip to Europe. And if you're familiar with our CAPS formula, the first two steps would be to identify the circumstances, in this case, the trip to Europe. And then the second part of the circumstances is to highlight very clearly that part of this trip where you needed to make a decision. And we've got to make it very clear what the decision was. Was it A or B? And you follow the process to frame out the rest of this question as we go down the page before we actually get started on our action steps. So that's something for another video. But for this one, again, just wanted to highlight that if you've got a good quality life experience that you can share with the interviewers, using the timeline technique, you can slice that up into smaller sections. And this is why you can have just 2 or 3 really good quality life experiences and cover almost all of the key selection criteria. I'll just leave you with this thought. Now that you have that technique, you do not need 20 individual good quality life experiences to be able to match up against the 20-odd key selection criteria that you might be faced with. 2 or 3 good quality experiences using the timeline technique is enough to help you cover 20 to 30 different questions that you're likely to get. All right, well, I hope you found that helpful. It's Russ here, Prime Motion Training. If I can help you sing out, otherwise good luck with your police selection panel interview.